So sad. I wish this was like an act. I wish I was just doing this for the camera, but I am so upset about this, man. I don't want to be here talking about this, but I got to do my job. So how's it going, everybody? Hope you're doing better than me. Today we're talking about Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic Remake, and y'all know how much this game means to me, man. Like, it's the reason I love video games. It's the reason I love Star Wars. To see a remake of literally my favorite game of all time, it was like a dream come true. I see so many people going like, oh, my favorite game's getting remade, and meanwhile I'm begging for the multi-million-dollar franchise in Fallout to remaster some games, and that my one kind of weird pick in Knights of the Republic Remake may actually happen. Oh, but we are far, far way away from that, and I'm gonna talk about it. So welcome one, welcome all. If you're like me and you love Knights of the Republic, this is your place to just get it all out. Let the anger out. Let the sadness out. Comment section or down below. That is your forum to write a letter of just deep, dark sadness to Lucasfilm on how you're feeling. So I'm right there with you. This is my letter to them. So let's talk KOTOR Remake. We got a pretty big leak. Some stuff on there I can corroborate because many of you know I had sources within Aspire who I know were working on Knights of the Republic Remake, and I fed you all a ton of information on that. Those sources, by the way, have gone ice cold since the big change from Aspire to Saber Interactive, so I have no updated information on the game anymore or what's going on in that company. But on top of that, we have comments, or really lack thereof, from the Embracer Group. And boy, does it say everything about this game, and that hurts, man, because I gotta be real with myself. Like, I'm gonna look at this information, and there's a bit of hopium in me that says, well, you know, maybe it's not too bad. But no, like, if this was any other game, I know I'd be giving it the smoke, going, oh, it's screwed. So I'm gonna try to be objective here. Let's talk about it. If you're new here and you like Knights of the Old Republic, we still talk about it whenever we get the chance. We're still waiting on KOTOR 2's DLC, by the way, for Switch. This is the bad time to be a KOTOR fan, man. Just go play the old games. Go enjoy yourself. Get the restored content mod on KOTOR 2. Do yourself the favor. Just remember why we love this franchise so much. KOTOR 1, of course, speaks for itself. So, Embracer Group. We got some interesting stuff happening in an earnings call. Let's read these tweets from Stephen Totillo, who transcribed the entire event. He writes, investor question. Could you please clarify the current status of the Star Wars Knights of the Republic Remake in regards to its development status and what shape it is in? Embracer CEO Wingafor says, favorite question, pauses as questioner chuckles. I have no further comments. Wingafor was about to say more. I don't want, end quote, but the investor relations interviewer spoke over him. The eternal interview lesson, let there be silence and let your interviewee fill that void. Not always easy. And that man, that person there, I could scream at them and be like, yo, what? Shut your mouth. I want to hear what he was about to say. But probably the reason he didn't pick it back up might have said too much there. I don't know if he's going to say, I don't want to excite you. I don't want to say too much. I don't want to spoil things because the THQ showcase is coming up soon. We don't know what he didn't want to do. So we can only guess. But what we did get is no comment. Now, what I will say in defense of KOTOR Remake is this one bit of copium, which is a lot of the reporting here is just interpretations based off old information. We don't know the status of the project right now. We don't know how it's going in Saber Interactive. The fact that he says no comment, I think, does say a lot. But again, this is all just based off how people's guts are going with the game, which is, oh, this doesn't look too good. If you read any of the reports, they're like, bad news for it, but he just said no comment. There have been plenty of other no comments submitted, and we get information. So I feel like at some point we got to know what's going on with this game in the terms of some kind of re-reveal, because a developer swap did happen, and you kind of have to communicate that to the consumer. That's been my rule of thumb for a while here. I feel like that makes some sense, but what do I know? I don't run a company that owns 5 billion developers. And hey, Embracer Group is hurting big time. They lost out on a $2 billion partnership that they were negotiating for 7 months. Some people are thinking it's the PlayStation Plus collection. Some people are saying it's Game Pass. I think Game Pass makes the most sense because it would have synchronized to right about now, where we would see all those THQ games come into the Xbox Game Pass library for the showcase. And if that is the case, what a tremendous missed opportunity, because they do have some good games there. And he seemed pretty out of sorts about it. And Embracer's hurting now. They are, if you will, embracing the pain. But KOTOR Remake, no comment at all. Nothing to really get out of that. Very different from last year. Last year, they were teasing more of seeing gameplay soon. You'll hear about it soon, right? And then obviously we know what happened with Embracer, with Lucasfilm, with Aspyr, with PlayStation. So for him to come 1 year later almost and say, yeah, no comment, again, really does speak for itself, because it was around this time last year we were gearing up, getting hyped, thinking like, yo, we're going to see gameplay soon. No, friend. No, unfortunately not. So that's what Embracer had to say. But let's get into this leak here. So this comes from 100% Star Wars, which is a YouTube channel dedicated to, you guessed it, Star Wars content. I'm not super familiar with this YouTuber, and I'm not going to fully put my word behind them because, again, I don't know who they are. It's no disrespect to them. But the reason I'm willing to talk about this leak is truly because there is stuff here that I have reported in the past that has been out there in the past, but also stuff that I knew about that I didn't talk about that is in here that would suggest to me this person knew people in Aspyr. And I'll point out what that is. But there was a lot of information in this video. At one point, he even suggested that Obsidian may have been working on a KOTOR remake or something like that. He also talked about the Star Wars Reforged collection, which leaked a while ago. The Obsidian one was news to me. But let's get into some of the major beats here for KOTOR Remake's big leak here. He mentions that the Sony partnership came a while later, as we all could pretty much tell based off how things were announced, and that Sony seems to have a lot to say about the game, but that Aspyr didn't really understand why. Microsoft was approached with this game, but didn't want a game developed by a studio they didn't own, like Indiana Jones is. So I guess they were offered KOTOR Remake and wanted to negotiate something along the lines of, well, what if one of our first party made it? And they couldn't get that, so they turned it down. Now, I reported over a year ago now that Xbox was approached with this game. So this shouldn't be new information to those of you watching this, but if this reasoning turns out to be true, this is pretty shocking, and I'm going to be honest, if it is true, Xbox, man, serious L here. I mean, this is legacy. You don't get to call those shots. I get if you'd like the option to do that, sure. But what first party, bro? They're all booked. So I just feel like this is a game you don't let slide. This is like PlayStation letting Sly Cooper come over to Xbox, in my opinion. Just why? Why would we do that? This is like Mass Effect 1 going exclusively for a remake over at PlayStation. Why would we do that? Why would we let that happen? So I wish Xbox put up here in this moment, because maybe this would have been avoidable. If PlayStation is heavily involved, we obviously will never know. But Xbox has been known, for better or for worse, the hands-off approach at Redfall. So maybe it could have benefited here where we just let Aspyr go and do their thing. But let's continue on. This is where I saw this and went, well, I got to talk about this now, because this individual does seem to have someone connected there. He mentions that they were pre-planning a KOTOR 2 remake and a KOTOR 3 remake. 3, news to me. 2, no, I heard that. That was something that I did hear, that I was told, hey, keep that off the table because they want to finish making the first game and getting it out there. But the idea was that, yeah, Aspyr was going to be that KOTOR studio. So to see this being popped out there, I was thinking, whoa, well, here we go. But yeah, this is what made me intrigued in talking about this leak, about this rumor, because based off sources I was able to verify long ago, this was information passed to me, and I was sitting there like, wow. I was excited because they were not just gearing up to do one game, but multiple. So when I saw this again, it was just, to me, justification to really talk about it and get into some of the new information that is here. Because there is more. I'm skipping over some of it, by the way, just because, genuinely speaking, like, I've talked about most of this many times in the past and have reported it first myself. He says full production began in 2022 with a planned release date for mid-2023, but some people inside the team didn't really think that this was achievable and worked for a more realistic goal of 2024 to 2025, with development going extremely well until Aspyr had shown off a vertical slice of the game to Lucasfilm and Sony in mid-2022. The first party loved it being Lucasfilm, while the second did not in Sony, and they thought the game was not cinematic enough. So this, again, is why I wanted to lean into some of the stuff I saw here that was true. I heard a similar thing that they were aiming for 2023, but they thought that it was ambitious. And since that lines up, and then what I heard about the remake lines up, then yo, hearing that Sony may have said, I don't want to go off on them completely because it's not verified, but if Sony thought it wasn't cinematic enough, oh my God. I feel like we're losing it. Again, I don't want to tee off on them too much, but if true, we got to tackle it like that. When I saw PlayStation Showcase, I noticed there was a lot of kind of we got this 2 energy. My co-host Lord Cognito pointed that out as well. This kind of like, we got our Fortnite, we got our answer to this, we got our answer to that. And I just recognized that some of the industries was losing this creativity. And like a lot of these games look the same, they play the same. Like, what are we doing? Why are we not differentiating enough? And part of me, if you disagree, but to me, RPGs aren't cinematic. The cinema, if you will, is me, the main character. I'm at the center of this world. I am this force that is blowing through here, and I am changing the world based off my decisions. That is cinema to many people. It is not the big Michael Bay explosion in the distance as the camera slowly pans over my shoulder and locks in, and now, oh wow, went from cutscene to gameplay. We don't need that crap all the time, man. I don't know how else to put it. To a lot of people, millions and millions of people, and the sales speak for themselves. You don't need to be cinematic to sell a role-playing game, especially because the intrigue is putting me in the shoes of the main character, and that gets a lot of people invested in the story more than any professionally shot cutscene actually could. So if true, extremely frustrating that that was a backbreaker for them. But it sounds tough to believe because it's so extreme that they'd switch studios, that they're going to fire developers. We'll talk about that right now. This is where Jason Schreier's article for Bloomberg hit, apparently, as it had accurate information, but they're claiming others not so much, like the game targeting 2022's release, or that it was stuck in production at the time it wasn't when it was written. Even after the firing, development had continued. The development of Old Republic Remake continued in another studio, of course, being Saber Interactive, which they described as Saber Portugal, helming the development. And apparently Aspyr was at a loss for this because they had no experience, and meanwhile Aspyr was tailor-made for this studio, hiring BioWare devs, which we could verify based off LinkedIn findings we had before. Now Aspyr, their developers left in droves, with about 70 people of the team of 200 leaving, and they seem to want to tackle other Star Wars remake projects. This is something I don't want to say I can corroborate, but look, remember what I said at the start of this video? Manny's sources went ice cold, and we heard about people getting fired. We heard about people leaving around the time Schreier's article dropped. Anecdotal for sure, but lines up, right? I mean, there were people who were just spoon feeding information to myself and many other YouTubers, and it was extremely surprising to see just how open things had been, because you know me, like, I have information from time to time, but who in the hell actually often leaks stuff to me? I think maybe 3-4 times a year I actually get something that I'm like, all right, like I'm gonna share this, and it's usually correct. But otherwise, like it's exceedingly rare, right? Like it's not my line of my career. It's not what I want to build my brand off of. I just like to pass the information when it's verified and that I feel can help the audience. Because again, something like KOTOR 2 Remake, like that's nonsense to share at the time where we're just trying to see what KOTOR 1's remake's going to be like. But yeah, it's, again, just really surprising to see how many people have left the team, if that ends up being true. And then we even have some gameplay details here, like Final Fantasy VII Remake. The combat was apparently going to be similar to that. This goes against what was told to me. You may remember I reported that it was going to be God of War and Neo inspired, with like stance switching and all that kind of stuff. But this one makes sense because it was shared with me and others that Final Fantasy VII Remake was like the touchstone in the terms of when they saw that game, that was the justification to go and remake KOTOR. They said like, okay, look at this. Like this is one of the things they're leaning into. So I don't know if that's what this YouTuber had originally meant or not, but I was told something completely different. And again, my sources were 100% verified. So this was the one odd spot where we differentiated. The remake didn't aim to add anything new, rather further develop what was already there, like quests and characters. They would be greatly expanded, and some characters would even be gender swapped, with all mini games returning, and a lot of the original voice actors would come back, save for those who passed away, and even the Malik voice actor would see a change. And even the even the main protagonist was going to be voiced apparently, and they aimed to keep the same amount of dialogue variety along with the major story remaining identical to the original. A lot of this stuff I already reported, but I wanted to highlight it again just in the light of what he said that lined up versus what he's hearing gameplay and story wise. And yeah, it was the same memo here, like major story, was going to stay the same, expanding on certain characters, keeping all the mini games. Swoop Racing was going to be there. Pazak was going to be there. Again, really exciting to hear that type of stuff. But nothing new. Sounds a little extreme because they were expanding, and because, I mean, based off what he's saying here, I'm saying that they were expanding, and if they were expanding, then that is new. But again, just a generalization there perhaps. But ladies and gentlemen, that's the leak for KOTOR Remake based off what 100% Star Wars has reported. If they ended up going with the voice protagonist and that's something that gets ripped out, I mean, God bless, thank goodness. That's not something that even crossed my mind. Like, why would we voice the main character in KOTOR, man? Awful choice if that happens. Awful choice as far as I'm concerned. Call me a purist, but just no. You just can't do that. Based off the twist, you can't do that. When you make that type of stuff canonical, you can't, in my opinion. So anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sad. I'm going to go eat like a bowl of ice cream or something and go cry myself to sleep. I hope you all enjoyed this video and walk away a little bit more informed. And I'm excited to hear your thoughts based off 100% Star Wars' leak, as well as what Embracer Group had to say down below. So please do fire away. And with that, take excellent care of yourselves. I'm looking forward to seeing all of your thoughts in the comments down below. And I'll see you next time. Be sure to follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram. Those links are down below, along with my Patreon. Do consider supporting that as it fuels all of the content I create here. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.